All right, guys, we are looking at the ELA reading assignment for Wednesday, December 9th. This passage is titled New Rules. You remember you have two passages per day and one grammar writing usage one. So this is one of the passages for today. So let's zoom in. We already know how we're going to work. Zoom in, read our passage, and then go through and answer our questions, okay? NASCAR is the National Association for Stock Car Racing. In recent years, the organization has made some changes in its rules. For example, steel and foam cushioning has been placed around NASCAR tracks to better absorb impact from hurtling cars. Race car drivers must now wear special head restraints that limit their neck movement during sudden stops. Air filters have been added to race cars to keep carbon monoxide out of the cockpit. The tires also have straps now to keep the wheels from flying off during crashes. All right, so this particular passage is explaining the NASCAR new rules. So essentially, the entire passage is talking about the implementation of new rules to keep drivers safe. The thing about NASCAR is when they're driving, they're literally going hundreds of miles per hour, so they're going extremely fast. Imagine how fast your mom may drive in a car down the street, multiply that by like 2 or 3, and that's how fast you're going, okay? And they're going around a track multiple times at that excessive speed, and so they wanted to implement new rules that was going to keep them from getting hurt or injured the best way they could while they are driving. And so that's why they told us a little bit about these new rules, okay? All right, so let's jump into our questions, okay? Zoom out. Here we go. Question number 1, fill in the correct circle to show whether each statement is a fact or an inference. Okay, so let's talk about facts and inferences. For one, we know that a fact is truth. It can be proven from information in the text. An inference is something that you kind of make an assumption about based on what you've read. Okay, so a fact, I'm going to slide over just a little bit. Okay, equals truth. An inference equals an assumption. So I'm just going to put assume. Okay. So I'm assuming something based on what I've read in a text. Okay. For instance, let me give you an example of an inference that's not in our text. You're on Snapchat and you see one of your friends post how such and such was talking about her, and when she see her at school tomorrow, it's going down. One, we shouldn't do that at school, but I'm just giving you a situation. So naturally, you're going to think that when this girl sees so-and-so at school the next day, she's either going to say something to her, she's either going to attack her, or it's going to be some drama. So you've made an assumption based on what you know from what somebody already told you. That's the same thing with when we're reading passages. We're looking at our text, okay? So let's look. We're going to do maybe all of them. I haven't decided yet. And NASCAR new rules were made to improve safety. Now, do we think that's a fact or an inference? You think that's an assumption or a fact? Okay. And so up here, we're going to look. In recent years, the organization has made some changes to the rules. Okay. So we have to determine, do we think that's a fact or an assumption? A fact is truth, that is to increase safety, or is an assumption that these new rules will increase safety. All right, let's look at B. Drivers now wear head restraints. This is something that we can know for a fact because it says right here, race car drivers now wear special restraints. That's truth. There's no assumption in that whatsoever. This is a fact. Okay? An assumption is an idea or hope that something happens, and the fact is something that is happening, okay? Race car drivers are sometimes hurt in accidents, okay? This could be either fact or an assumption, and you have to determine that. What do you think? Okay? And lastly, race cars give off carbon monoxide. Now, this one's a little tricky, but I want to go back to our passage and see if we can find out the answer. Okay, so air filters have been added to race cars to keep carbon monoxide out of the cockpit. Okay, well, where is carbon monoxide coming from? If you're in a cockpit, there's only humans and stuff in there. So where's it coming from? Naturally, it's coming from our race cars. And not just race cars. Cars also give off carbon monoxide, but if race cars give off a higher content or higher level of carbon monoxide because they're driving at excessive speeds, okay? All right, so for A and C, I want you to go back and look and see if it's inference or fact for yourself, okay? All right, let's look at question 2. In the paragraph, the word absorb must mean. Now, let's go back to our paragraph and find the word absorb. All right, let's change it out. For example, steel foam cushioning has been placed around NASCAR tracks to better exaggerate impact from hurtling cars. For example, steel and foam cushioning has been placed around NASCAR tracks to better withstand the impact from hurtling cars, to better change the impact of hurtling cars, or to better forgive the impact of hurtling cars. One thing we want to know is exaggeration means to be over the top. So we're not trying to exaggerate the impact of hurtling cars. We're not trying to make it worse. We're trying to do the opposite, okay? So we know exaggeration cannot be the answer, okay? And also, they track to better forgive the impact of hurtling cars. It's a little shaky as well. Are we forgiving anything? Not actually. Okay, so that leaves us with 2 choices, and I want you to really go back and think about which one makes the most sense, to change the impact from hurtling cars or to withstand it. And when you think about absorb, I want you to think about a sponge. If you have a sponge and you put it in water, it absorbs the water into the sponge. So I want you to think, is it withstanding it or is it changing it? Okay. Question 3. From this paragraph, you can conclude, remember those inferences is like a conclusion. You can assume that race car drivers are unhappy with the changes. Stock car racing is an easy sport. Accidents have occurred in NASCAR races, or NASCAR tracks are perfectly safe. What's one thing we can automatically not conclude? One thing that we know is not true. NASCAR tracks are perfectly safe. We know that can't be true because if they were, they would not have new rules in place for safety of our drivers, okay? So that's one thing we know we cannot conclude, okay? And then we also want to look at stock car racing is an easy sport. If it was so easy, then that means they wouldn't have so many rules in place to keep people safe, okay? So it's not an easy sport. That leaves us with two answers, and that's going to be something you go back into your passage and try your best to make a decision on, okay? And lastly, which word in the passage is a clue to how the writer feels about the rule changes? Is the writer feel like these are sudden? Do they feel like these are better changes, or does he feel like this is hurting the individuals? Now, if you look at the new rules, most of the tone of the story is that the writer is kind of giving you these new rules, and he's giving you the effect of why this could be a good decision for them. Okay, so now you have to determine, does he feel like it's sudden rules? Does he feel like this is better for the drivers, or does he feel like this may be hurting the drivers? Okay. All right, that's all for new rules. If you have any questions, you already know. You can email me, Heard-Hixon.RHESHVA@gmail.com, or you can call or text me 256-513-8064. All right, guys.